Cougs House, the Houston Cougars have a big opportunity this week in basketball, a fun start of spring ball happening in football, but they can't just catch a break.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Andrews, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And if you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so good to see you again. Remember to hit subscribe. We're doing a giveaway every 500 subscribers, and we're up over the 2,000 mark at about 2050, looking to get to 2,500 quickly. So hit subscribe. Let's get there. Like, comment the video. Let us know you're in the contest to give something away. If you don't know what to say at this moment, just like, I'm just so dismayed by all these injuries and the bad news and the so on. Tell us in the comments down below where the best taco in town is. Now, today's episode, I was about to just say show, do I say segment, etc. It's gonna be a little back and forth. We're talking some about injuries and what they look like at the outset of an important week for basketball and football programs. Both of them have to unfortunately deal with some rather large injuries or looming injuries for sure. UCF, I'm talking some about reminding us how that game went the first time, because Houston's going to play UCF in men's basketball on Wednesday again, this time in Central Florida. And then I want to make some predictions for that ball game. It's going to be really, really important. I'm working on a UCF guest to show up and help out some for Wednesday's episode. I always like to get the other team's perspective. Working on a different one. We had Sean Green on earlier this year. And maybe for good luck, I should keep him going because the game went Houston's way in a big way. But looking for some more perspective on their season and how their transition to Big 12 has been. So that's what's on the docket for later this week. Obviously, Kansas coming up this weekend dominates a basketball-heavy week for sure. But first, we're talking some about injuries. Now, we talked some in Monday's episode about basketball injuries, and that's part of this segment too. It was made official that JoJo Tugler will have surgery on that broken foot. In a press conference on Monday, Kelvin Sampson said that they actually scheduled the surgery intentionally for a time that he and Kellen could go. It's that kind of a program, folks. I know that was kind of thing that like a lot of people around the country, like, oh man, look at this guy. And it's like, no, we know, we understand that that's what the Sampsons do. This is a family. It's a family organization, family operation. The Sampsons had the surgery moved so they could go, or at least Kellen and Kelvin could go. And I'm assuming it's right there where, I mean, his family's in Cyprus. Assuming that JoJo's family would be there as well. We also, I guess, in the same press conference got wind that it sounds like the earliest timetables of Ramon Walker, like could he be back by the Elite Eight or Final Four? It sounds like that, pipe dream may just be that, a pipe dream, not necessarily because Houston's not intending on going very far in the NCAA tournament, but because Ramon's, that would be a fairly expedited recovery process. Does not sound like that's been going on. Now, in terms of basketball injuries, we did a whole episode on Monday about this, but it does look like Sedlot is going to play more and have a bigger role. He's grown up some. Sampson had good things to say about him. I was impressed with his time against Oklahoma. I think Central Florida offers a good matchup. We'll talk about some of the prediction segment at the end of the show, but I think on the whole, get ready to see a lot more Sedlot in this last week of regular season and the conference tournament and March Madness. Obviously, it'll probably a little faster than we were hoping to. But on the whole, I think that there's times and places this could work very, very well for Houston. The other big injury news that may have actually set off more red flags, more alarms, etc., was actually on the gridiron. That didn't come out smoothly. On the gridiron, Donovan Smith apparently has had surgery on his shoulder and is rehabbing that and will miss spring practice with the football program. Now, I think the particularly uncomfortable part of that is that the entire coaching staff has changed. Not the majority of the coaching staff has changed over. Kevin Barbe brings in a brand new offense. Sean Bell's brand new quarterbacks coach. Obviously, Coach Willie Fritz is brand new head football coach. And as a captain and leader of this football team, you'd hope that Donovan would be there for those practices. Now, obviously, any quarterback can be a leader while they're not on the field. I don't mean to say that Donovan won't be that leader, but as far as getting the physical reps, it's going to go to other guys. Imagine you see Whale and probably some Zion Chris. I don't know that either one of those guys has any serious contention to start next fall. I've maintained I think there'll be a Zion Chris type of package. He's got that elusive running stuff that you could almost do like a wildcat type of look if you really wanted to. So maybe they just do a lot of that, right? I guess you got to teach the offense the other guys too, but just something to get ready for the fall. I think the big thing though for Donovan will be his physical limitations this spring make all of the film room in the playbook, staying late with his wideouts to talk through if this, then that kind of reads. Those are all that much more important because he can't go out there and get his timing down with the guys in this offense. Now, obviously, he's played with Sammy Brown, played with Joe Manjack for a while now. He got here last January, so we're up over a year at this point. But I do think that there is a difference in a new offense. So you might think, how every deep crossing route goes with Sammy and just have perfect timing on it, etc. But when the alterations come in the Barbe offense, or Sean Bell has him doing a little bit different read, a little bit different progression, the timing does change. And I guess I sound more solemn than I thought I'd be to start spring football practice, because I think the big letdown is that this is supposed to be an exciting time. Houston made a home run of a coaching hire and has continued to nail each of the hires on this staff. And I know I'm the optimistic homer always. I know people tell me that way too often. This is a podcast. It's not formal journalism. I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to root for my teams. But I would point out that I'm not the only one saying it, right? At the national level, the ESPNs, the Sports Illustrateds before they went bankrupt, and all those different things are talking about how these were great hires in December and January. And now you've got, unfortunately, kind of a speed bump. At least I'm hoping it's just a speed bump on the reality of that situation. Houston's going to be okay in the long run, right? We know this is a program that it needs to be rebuilt. It needs to kind of, tear down some pillars to put up some walls kind of stuff. What's the saying about breaking an omelet, or making an omelet and breaking eggs, or all of those different types of metaphors I think apply to Houston Cougar football program at this moment. I just think this unfortunately does probably slow things down. Donovan Smith is not that there's never competition. You hope there's competition for every spot, but he had been slotted to be the starter in everyone's mind for a long time. There were several assistant coaches on the offensive staff that cited Donovan as a reason they came to Houston, right? And I think that, frankly, his time at Tech, and there were bright spots in the year last year. A win-loss record wasn't great, but there were definitely spots in the season where you feel like, oh, Donovan Smith, this offense feel like they're humming right now. Oh, they're finally moving the ball right here. Oh, this and then that. Like, there were moments where you saw it happening and saw it unfolding, and every one of the staff came to Houston knowing that he's the guy for this fall, right? Now, do you hope to train and turn Zion Chris into something? Absolutely. Does this kind of give him a little bit of a leg up in getting to be that something by the next year? Definitely. Do I think he starts in year one? I'm not sure. I think he's the kind of guy that can compete for a job, and obviously being the healthy guy this spring will help him compete for that. I'd be interested to see, frankly, when practice starts on Tuesday, I guess later in the day as you're hearing this, does Zion get the first team reps, or does we get the first team reps, or who gets the first team reps with Donovan out to the best that they have them will be intriguing. We have a formal spring game on the books as well, and this time it'll be on ESPN Plus, and it's like, they can always put it in the indoor. Anyway, they can always find ways to get this thing going. It's not going to be rained out like it was last year. It's in the indoor facility and all those kind of bits, right? And so I say that to say that we get to kind of see a interesting duel in that game now, and what that looks like will tell us a lot. I kind of want to leave that conversation there for now because we haven't seen any of it yet, right? And so I don't want to pass other judgments on what happens where Lucas Coley fits in, and all that kind of stuff, because frankly, that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we got to wait and see a lot in the football program. Now, if you're like me and waiting can be hard when there's nothing interesting going on, you need some way to add some interest to time while you wait. You can go get buckets at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. You put $5 down, that thing hits. $150 back in bonus bets in your account right away. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams, quick bet, same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Right now, as we're recording this, Houston's an 8-point favorite at home against San Antonio in the NBA side of things on Tuesday night. Now, I've been telling you for a while now, take Houston at home. I know Wembanyama's over there. Take Houston at home, put $5 on it, get $150 back in bonus bets if your bet wins at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so in getting past injuries and thinking happier thoughts, I want to take you back to a time on January 20th when, man, oh man, all things seem to be clicking for the Houston Cougars. Yes, they lost Terrence Arsenault in early December, but Houston was finding their footing in the Big 12 Conference, and Houston matched up with a Central Florida squad on January 20th in Houston, and ultimately gave them everything they could handle and a whole heck of a lot more. Houston won the ball game 57-42. Central Florida made just 7 field goals. 7 field goals. 24 of their points were on made free throws. That's 24. They shot 33 field goals, 33 free throws in the game. They shot 15.9%. If you remember from the game live, while we were live tweeting, because we live tweet every game at Pains with 512, talk about every game as it's going. We were keeping track of, for a while there, they were on pace to have the worst shooting performance in terms of field goal percentage in the history of men's college basketball. The history of the game. They shot 7, and they made 7 field goals. 4 of those were threes. I just cannot stress enough that Houston had such a tremendous defensive effort in that game. No Central Florida player in that game made a 2-pointer that was not at the rim. Okay. 24 of their 42 points were from free throws. They only had 18 points from field goals. Right? So they had 6 more points from free throws than field goals. Of the 37 missed shots, they only pulled in 9 offensive rebounds. Jalen Sellers averages, I guess he's actually closer to 18 points per game right now at the time, and going into the game, he was averaging 17. He had just 4. Darius Johnson had been averaging 14. He had just 3. They had Marcellus Avery. He's averaging like 9 at that point. He's closer to 10 right now. He scored 10 in that game. 8 of his 10 were free throws. Right? He's only averaging 2 free throws a game. Before that, he's at about 2.5 right now. I'd imagine that game did bring up his average. No starter for Central Florida had more than 5 points in that game, and that Marcellus Avery guy we talked about was the only guy on the team in double figures at 10 points. Houston had 24 points in the paint compared to the 18 points on all field goals that Central Florida had. Houston had 15 points off turnovers in this game. Again, Central Florida 18 points off of all field goals put together. Over the course of the game, Central Florida fell in a bunch of different offensive categories at kind of catastrophic rates nationally. It was really, really funny to watch it. Frankly, I don't mean to be like that guy, but when I look at Central Florida's season, it kind of started this collapse. So at the time, Central Florida was 11-6, 2-3 in the conference, but had beat Kansas at home had beat Texas, ranked on the road, and they kind of felt like they had a shot to really make some noise in the Big 12 Conference, and then Houston squashed all that. Now, they bounced back and beat West Virginia the next week, but Central Florida has, since the Houston game, gone just, let me double check my math here, 4-7. Okay, and then they've also gone 4-7 in conference, obviously, because it's all conference games. And that's, is there a word better than bad to use for that? It's bad. They lost to Cincinnati. They lost to Baylor. Baylor's good. That's fair. They lost to Tech on the road. They managed to beat Tech at home for one of their couple wins there. Other wins were West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was a close one. West Virginia was a close one. They beat Oklahoma in Central Florida, which gives me a little pause because that's Oklahoma and Kansas both getting beat in Orlando, where Houston's going to have to play a midweek game. And we get the predictions that will shape my predictions some. I'm still picking Houston to win this one, though. The trick in this game was actually, if you want to go back and think about like personnel in this game, it was kind of the Malik Wilson coming out party. He played 23 minutes in that game. In part, Jalen Roberts was just kind of starting to deal with his knee injury that he's playing through. And he sat out second half because it was such a blowout feeling game. But Malik Wilson played 23 minutes and a usage percentage of 29.4%. That means in roughly 30% of the possessions he was on offense for in the game the first time around, roughly 30%, it ended with him having an assist, a basket, or a turnover, or a missed shot, right? The ball left his hands to end the play. And I will say he had 8 points and 7 boards, missed a couple dunks, lob attempts and stuff like that. He could have had closer to 14. I thought it was interesting, though, that this was kind of like the beginning of Malik Wilson as small ball power forward. And now we're playing this game in the first week of March. And like, due to injuries to JoJo and Ramon and obviously Terrence back in like December, this is kind of like, it's not a new thing that Malik Wilson's the small ball forward. It's a necessary thing. It's like, okay, he's the only guy with any kind of length that we can put at that spot in certain times of the game, right? And so, admittedly, I bet Central Florida was not ready for this at that point in the season, but it's become something that Houston's using as a key weapon in what they do on both offense and defense. Will be interesting to see how they go about it in this game. I would point out Ramon Walker did play a big role in the defensive effort of this basketball game, had 19 minutes, played really impressive defense in those 19 minutes. This was, back in the day, we hadn't even played BYU yet. This is pre-road victories for Houston, and now they're on the road having to do it all over again. Central Florida, I should say, we'll talk in the prediction segment in a second, does look a little bit different. They look a little bit better, even though they've lost some games. Their numbers have gone up, and that might be in large part because of how dramatically they dropped after playing Houston. Yeah, I'll talk about that in the prediction segment in a second. But first, it's been a wild ride of a season. Injuries, chaos. We're in March, buzzer beaters, etc. And if you are in for a wild ride or like an exciting ride yourself, you got to go to nissanusa.com, because if you're the kind of driver that likes to push things further, they've got the ride for you. Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. I've been pushing the 2024 Nissan Rogue because it's a perfect drive in both the city and on those great escapes. They have all kinds of class exclusives like Google built in, so you're always, able to get updates from your assistant right there in your car, but in your computer, because it's got a built into the dash Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store right there. The 12.3-inch HD touchscreen and all kind of entertainment system as well coming out of that. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. It's all built into the car. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-sized crossover for your next adventure. So take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, so I've been leading to this prediction segment because I'm hoping to nail down a Central Florida guest for Wednesday's episode because I got a couple of feelers out there. We're trying to change it up on you. Sean's great, but we're trying to change it up a little bit. But that means I gotta get you my prediction now because we're talking now. And honestly, if we get off track tomorrow, I'll make sure you got mine. Central Florida's good at home, and I want to stress that they beat good teams at home. They've got an environment that, say what you want to say about Central Florida and whatever, and Space City versus Space City and da 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 da. They appreciate Big 12 basketball. They've appreciated showing up for the top teams. They did some court storming versus Kansas and Texas and all the. I mean, Texas, they did the horn down thing. That was different, right? The classless thing, da 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 da, right? And what I would point out is that Houston walks into Orlando with a gigantic target on their back. Now they're used to it. They've had it for a while now, and frankly, they've played in Orlando, unlike other Big 12 teams. At this point, you can almost argue that it's an advantage, right? Because getting to go on the road to these longer road trips is something Houston's done for a long time in the American Athletic Conference. Houston, though, I would point out in this game, even more so than the first, is continuing to slow down their pace of play. They play at one of the slowest possession rates per game in the entire Division I men's college basketball landscape. And I say that to say that in terms of like seconds per possession before the first shot, Houston ranks in the 309. They rank 319th out of 331 teams, right? That's a lot. I mean, slow is like 200th, right? And they rank 319th. Central Florida, the inverse, is a little faster at this point in the season they played before. I would point out that when you turn the ball over, that also counts as like when you lose the ball or whatever in the course of that statistic. And they're a little turnover happy and turnover prone. That's why Houston had such a great defensive effort against them in the first matchup. Central Florida will turn the ball over on roughly, if season averages hold, 18 and change percent of their possessions. That means almost 1 out of 5. Houston will probably have their fair share of steals and deflections and fast breaks and stuff like that. In the first matchup, Central Florida had 15 turnovers. Houston had 11 steals. I'd imagine that even in Orlando, while it might not be 15-11, it might be like 13-9 or something like that. I'd imagine that stands as a important factor that Houston dominates in this basketball game. You can't change who you are, can't change who you bring in. And I would point out that defense travels better than offense does, right? I'm not a betting man myself personally, although I do enjoy looking at the odds and making picks. Picks are just for fun, right? For entertainment purposes only. I do look at this game as a chance for Jawan to get busy. He'll get as many minutes as his body and foul trouble can take, knock on wood, because there just aren't a whole lot of subs. He's kind of a backup 5 and the starting power forward, both. I look at this and see, they've been going him for the first set out the gates, however many games in a row now. The ESPN telecast, they said 7. I want to say it's been more than that. Sampson likes the post involved early. He was 10 of 12 from the field against Oklahoma, and frankly might have had more if he had not had to get stitches in his right hand. He practiced with a big bandage on his right hand on Monday. He is fairly left-hand dominant as a player in the post, so I would imagine as long as the stitches continue to heal fine, that he might be in some pain. But honestly, I don't know how much takes away from his offensive game. I would worry about things like, is he the same hustling, dive on the floor, et cetera type player? And it was fun, the game-winning play against Oklahoma. He clearly is, right? And that might have been instinct, that might have been whatever, but I think that I think he'll be okay. Stitches are very serious and plays a very serious cut. And I don't mean to say or make light of someone else's injury. It's just the kind of thing that heals quick enough that I feel like he'll be okay with the bandage on it. And the bandage, if anything, might be a little bulky, I guess. You could argue that would throw things off. But he plays so left-hand dominant offense. I don't know that it matters. And then, shoots a lot of shots close to the rim. So I think Jay has a big day. I think, honestly, Malik Wilson has a big day. And then, as I said in Monday's show, I think Sid Lott has a big day. Central Florida plays every one of these games with, and they've only done it more since playing Houston, at least one 6'10" guy on the court. Outside that spot, they actually match up very well with Houston as far as having 6'7s and 6'4s and 6'1s. But that 6'10" on the court at all times means that you can't really realistically go 5 guards, right? I think it'd be interesting to see for stretches of a game, like if you got up by a lot and could like bleed a few points, see what the offense looked like. But I just don't think you're going to do that against Central Florida in this matchup. I do think that means Ced gets to play, though. I think Ced can play with these guys athletically. It's going to be about, is he dialed in, not getting beat for those flare pick and pop kind of stuff like he did, like he gave a 3 against Oklahoma with, right? I don't think he will, but that's where I could see this thing going south. If you're telling me it's going south. I also think it's worth pointing out in the first matchup, Central Florida did out-rebound Houston. Now, it's in large part because they missed so many shots. And frankly, Houston didn't, at least not in the first half. And so I feel like they feel like that length is going to be their advantage. You could see a couple 6'10s in the court at one point if they needed to kind of push Houston around, especially Houston having so many bigs or quasi bigs and guys like Ramon out. They might think that they can take advantage of that, right? I would also feel comfortable pointing out that Houston's going to rely on the 3-headed monster of Roberts, Cryer, and Shed for a lot of the scoring. I said on Monday's episode that I really want to see Emmanuel Sharp take that next step into being that kind of we need a basket, he's the killer kind of guy. I think he's got it in his bag. I think it's in him and in his mentality. I want to see it, and we kind of need it right now with more guys hurt, right? It helps everyone out when they can kind of catch their breath while one guy is saying, I'm going to get a bucket here, right? That helps out in the long run. I say that to say that I'm thinking Houston wins this game. It might be by the same 12-15. They won the first game by 15. I just don't think it'll feel like the same kind of blowout the first game felt like. First game was a 15-point win, and it never felt like Central Florida was even that close, right? The largest lead in that game, for what it's worth, was a 25-point lead out of Houston. Free throws when Houston got sloppy were the only reason the game was as close as 15. It just is. I don't think this game will be that kind of a blowout, right? I think Houston will be up by 10-ish. There'll be a couple fouls, try and play the foul game, free throws late, and then get up to 15-ish, and Houston will hold on to win. That's just my prediction on this one. Like I said, I think that the 3-headed monster of veterans we have will all come through with some scoring. J1's been great on the road. Cryer's been a sharpshooter as of late. And then, Shed does Jamal Shed things, right? He'll get probably 12 or 14 points, probably have 5 or 6 assists, probably have maybe 1 turnover, right? Like that's just the kind of leadership he'll bring to the floor. It'll be interesting to see where the rest of the points come from. I think it'll be kind of evenly distributed. I'd like it to be heavily leaning towards Emmanuel Sharp. I think that getting him going will be important. If you think I'm wrong, think I'm crazy, think I'm doing something terribly far off, tell me in the comments down below. I'll be happy to talk to you about it each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of Locked On Podcast. That is your team, our Cougs, our number 1 in America, Houston Cougars, each and every day. Go Cougs.